Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We are diving into the major global shifts happening right now, specifically looking at the big headlines for May 19th, 2026. Today, we're taking a pretty fascinating journey. We're going to trace a line from high-stakes conflicts overseas, literally right down to the local policies shaping our own backyards. There is a ton of incredibly consequential stuff to unpack today, so let's just jump right in. Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to use a bit of a geographic zoom to make sense of all these complex, interconnected events. We'll start with escalating tensions in the Middle East, shift over to global alliances, then zoom in closer to home for North American law and policy, and finally, look at how all this trickles down into health, tech, and sports. All right, Section 1, Middle East tensions escalate. We're looking at high-stakes geopolitics and shifting strategies. So we kick things off with a massive development regarding U.S. and Iranian relations. President Trump has officially paused a scheduled massive military strike against Iran. Now, what's really crucial to understand here isn't just the pause itself, but why it happened. This wasn't some isolated decision. It actually came after direct personal appeals from leaders in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. The White House noted they're doing this specifically to give ongoing diplomatic talks in Tehran some much-needed breathing room. But, make no mistake, while diplomacy's happening, the U.S. military remains absolutely on high alert. Okay, let's dive into this number. $5 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering amount of oil revenue intelligence reports say Iran has lost just since April. To put that into perspective, it's a massive financial hit, and it's the direct result of an aggressive U.S. naval blockade that is currently choking Iran's maritime trade. And, well, every action has a reaction, right? Let's look at how Iran is tactically responding to this intense economic and military pressure. First, just out of sheer necessity to handle all that unexportable oil caused by the blockade, they've actually converted 10 of their aging oil tankers into floating storage units. It's a massive logistical pivot. Secondly, and this is critical, intelligence leaks indicate Iranian commanders are using this current ceasefire to study the flight paths of U.S. bombers and fighter jets. They're essentially mapping out their own air defense blind spots, preparing for the very real possibility that these peace talks might break down. But, modern warfare isn't just hardware, it is heavily psychological. Defense analysts are reporting that Hezbollah has significantly ramped up the release of high-definition footage showing attacks on symbolic Israeli military assets. This is a highly calculated psychological campaign. The entire goal here is to present their strikes as completely unavoidable, even with Israel's advanced defensive shields in place. And they're doing this specifically to degrade the morale of both Israeli civilians and the IDF. Shifting gears to the Eastern Mediterranean, tensions have spiked dramatically following a major maritime interception. Armed Israeli commandos intercepted a Gaza-bound humanitarian aid convoy known as the Global Samud Flotilla, right off the coast of Cyprus. Just to give you a sense of the sheer scale here, 41 out of the 50 ships in this flotilla were seized, and over 330 international activists from 40 different countries were taken into custody. Now, this brilliantly illustrates how local flashpoints become global incidents in a matter of hours. The diplomatic and grassroots fallout was immediate. World leaders, including Turkish President Erdogan and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, heavily condemned the raid, both labeling it piracy. And it's not just politicians talking. This event triggered massive, immediate street protests across international borders, specifically erupting in Italy and Greece. So, what does this all mean for global trade protection? Well, it brings us to a major friction point happening right now inside NATO. Currently, several NATO nations really want to deploy military escorts to protect commercial vessels going through the highly volatile Strait of Hormuz by July. But here's the catch. NATO requires unanimous agreement to officially launch that kind of initiative. And right now, they just don't have it. It's a massive administrative hurdle that has direct, real-world implications for the security of everyday global shipping routes. Okay, moving on to Section 2, Global Alliances and Divisions. Let's look at this eastward momentum. Because while the West is applying pressure, we are seeing a major strategic reorganization in the East. Russian President Vladimir Putin is currently in Beijing for an official state visit, arriving right at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. This really underscores a coordinated effort to build economic resilience. The primary focus of these meetings, which, by the way, include important sit-downs with Premier Li Qiang, is to deepen trade pipelines. It's a high-stakes geopolitical move explicitly aimed at circumventing Western sanctions and locking in long-term economic cooperation. Let's bring things a bit closer to home. Section 3, North American Law and Policy. We'll be looking at domestic flashpoints and tragedies. First up, we're seeing a stark, multi-billion-dollar contrast in how a major new domestic policy is being framed. The White House just launched a $1.7 billion anti-weaponization fund. Now, according to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, this is designed as a government compensation fund meant to reimburse citizens who claim they were politically targeted by previous Justice Department administrations. On the exact opposite side, congressional Democrats are sharply criticizing the move, officially labeling the entire program an administrative slush fund. So we've got a massive, highly polarized flashpoint over the use of federal funds. I want to take a serious pause for a moment here because we need to cover a profoundly tragic domestic development. Federal investigators are currently treating a horrific attack at the Islamic Center of San Diego as a hate crime. Authorities have confirmed they recovered anti-Islamic manifestos from the vehicle of 2 teenage gunmen who murdered 3 people on Monday. And tragically, among those lost was a security guard who acted heroically during the attack. Reports do confirm that both attackers took their own lives following the incident. Okay, stepping back into the legislative arena, things are moving incredibly fast in Washington right now. Lawmakers are in an absolute sprint to clear a massive backlog of bills ahead of the Memorial Day recess. They aren't moving slowly, they are pushing through a wide array of crucial domestic legislation, specifically speeding through bills that address foster youth, overhaul Veterans Affairs management, and target healthcare payment reforms. And looking up north to Canada, their healthcare infrastructure is facing some serious friction. Regional nurses' unions have launched coordinated, highly public campaigns against newly introduced provincial resource allocations. The unions are urgently warning that this restructuring is going to lead to imminent burnout and severe staff shortages. And honestly, post-pandemic healthcare burnout is such a universal theme right now, which makes this Canadian struggle a really vital microcosm for global healthcare challenges as a whole. So, we've talked geopolitics, military strategy, and heavy domestic policy. But beyond the halls of government, what shifts are happening in the everyday world? What's going on in global health, tech, and sports? Let's jump into our final block, Section 4, Health, Tech, and Sports, and how all this impacts our global communities. What's really fascinating here is the massive global reach across 3 totally distinct sectors today. In global health, serious warnings are going out about measles risks for international travelers heading to the 2026 FIFA World Cup hubs. In the sports world, the NFL is expanding its global footprint in a huge way. Owners just authorized up to 10 international games for the 2027 season. And in tech and finance, a Quebec startup is taking its platform global, launching a gamified app that actually uses interactive design to incentivize youth to build their retirement and emergency savings. It's a pretty smart approach to financial literacy, really. And finally, looking at how innovation directly hits home, the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging has set a session called Preventing Falls, Preserving Independence. This is a fantastic push to officially integrate new smart tech directly into federal senior safety guidelines. It's a policy shift that could literally change how we protect our aging parents and grandparents in the years to come. Which brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We've traced the threads from paused military strikes and massive naval blockades straight through to congressional battles and the healthcare tech in our homes. So I want to leave you with this thought. From shifting global alliances to our own domestic divides, which of the policies we explore today do you think will most dramatically reshape our tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep learning, keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time.